Breaking news. The Vance Corporation has officially declared bankruptcy under its former heiress, but new CEO Adrian has saved the day. The news anchor's voice grated against my ears. I lay on the thin, stained mattress of the state hospital, my breath rattling in my chest like broken glass. I couldn't move. I could only watch. On the cracked TV screen mounted on the wall, Adrian raised a champagne glass. He looked perfect in his tailored suit, glowing with health and wealth. To the future, he beamed, looking straight into the camera. And to my beautiful fiancée, Layla. The camera panned to her. Layla giggled, clinging to his arm, wearing my mother's diamond necklace, my stepsister, my husband. You stole it all, I wheezed, hot tears leaking from the corners of my eyes. They had taken my money, my home, my reputation, and finally, my life. I was dying alone, penniless, while they drank champagne on my grave. If I could just, I gasped, my heart stuttering painfully. If I could just kill you. The machine next to me screamed, beep. The darkness swallowed me. The rage burned hotter than the fever. Gasp, my eyes flew open. My lungs sucked in air so violently I nearly fell off the bed. I sat up, clutching my chest, trembling uncontrollably. No, I whispered, panting hard. No. I waited for the pain. I waited for the smell of antiseptic and death. But instead I smelled lavender. I looked down. Silk sheets. My hands, they weren't thin and skeletal anymore. They were smooth, manicured. The engagement ring on my finger sparkled under the morning sun. I scrambled out of bed, my legs shaking, and ran to the floor-length mirror. The face staring back wasn't the broken, dying woman of 28. It was the naive, foolish heiress of 25. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand, the screen lit up. June 12th, 3 years ago, my knees hit the carpet. I'm back, I choked out, a hysterical laugh bubbling up in my throat. I'm actually back. I looked at my reflection again. The girl in the mirror looked innocent, soft, and easy to manipulate. But the eyes were dead cold. Knock, knock. Elena? Baby? Are you awake? The voice made my blood freeze in my veins. Adrian. My hand shot out, grabbing the heavy silver letter opener from my desk. The metal was cold and sharp. I hid it behind the folds of my silk nightgown, gripping it until my knuckles turned white. Come in, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. The door creaked open. Adrian stepped in, holding a massive bouquet of red roses. He wore that same dazzling, fake smile he had on the TV screen just moments ago or years from now. Happy 3-month anniversary, he said, his voice dripping with charm. I thought you might be sleeping in, princess. He walked closer, reaching out to tuck a strand of hair behind my ear. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to stab him. To end it right now. I was just having a nightmare, I lied softly, staring up at him without blinking. Well, I'm here now, he purred, leaning down to kiss my forehead. I'll always take care of you, Elena. You know that. I know you will, Adrian, I replied. I smiled at him. It was a perfect, sweet, loving smile. Behind my back, I tightened my grip on the dagger. You think you won, I thought, my heart pounding a war drum against my ribs. But you just walked into hell. This venture is foolproof, sir, Adrian said, his voice smooth as velvet. He leaned across the mahogany dining table, sliding a thick contract toward my father. If you sign over the inheritance rights now, I can triple the assets before the wedding. It's the perfect gift for Elena. My father, Mr. Vance, adjusted his glasses, looking at the papers. In my past life, I would have been squeezing his hand right now, begging him to trust the man I loved. Not tonight. That sounds amazing, honey, I said, widening my eyes with feigned innocence. I reached out and picked up the contract. But I'm a little confused about this part. Clause 14? Adrian froze, his fork hovering halfway to his mouth. Which part, babe? It's just standard business stuff. It says here that the primary investor assumes full liability for total loss. I read aloud, furrowing my brow. Does that mean if the business fails, Daddy loses the estate? The room went dead silent. My father frowned, putting down his wine glass. Let me see that, Elena. Adrian laughed nervously, reaching for the paper, but I held it out of his reach, handing it directly to my father. I'm sure it's just legal jargon, Elena, Adrian said, his smile tight. You don't need to worry your pretty head about the details. But I am worried, I pouted, looking at my father. Daddy worked his whole life for this money. Why would we risk the house just for a maybe? She has a point, son, my father said, his voice hardening as he scanned the page. This liability clause is incredibly dangerous. I didn't catch that earlier. I can't sign this. Adrian's jaw tightened. A flash of pure, cold rage passed through his eyes, a look I knew well from the end of my last life, but he blinked, and it was gone. Of course, sir, Adrian said, retreating quickly. My lawyers must have made a mistake. I'll have them revise it immediately. Good catch, Elena. I'm just trying to help, I chirped. Suddenly, the tablecloth shifted near my knees. I glanced down. Lila's foot was sliding up Adrian's calf. He didn't pull away. He pressed back against her leg, his hand gripping his napkin tight. Bile rose in my throat. I looked up to find Lila smiling sweetly at me from across the table. You're so lucky, Elena, she purred, taking a sip of her wine. Adrian worked so hard to secure your future. Most men wouldn't care this much. I know, I said, forcing a smile that felt like it might crack my face. I'm the luckiest girl in the world. I shoved a piece of steak into my mouth, chewing mechanically. It tasted like ash. I couldn't stay here. I needed backup. Excuse me, I said, standing up abruptly. I need to powder my nose. I walked calmly to the bathroom, locked the door, and leaned against the cold marble sink. My hands were shaking. I wasn't just angry, I was terrified. I couldn't fight them alone. I pulled out my phone. My thumb hovered over a contact I hadn't spoken to in 6 months, Maya. Adrian had convinced me she was toxic and jealous. He had isolated me completely. But she was the only one who had ever told me the truth about him. I hit call. Elena? Her voice was sharp, guarded. I thought you weren't allowed to talk to me anymore. Tears pricked my eyes. I was wrong, Maya. I was wrong about everything. Silence hung on the line, then a soft sigh. What did he do? He's trying to rob my father, I whispered. And Lila. Lila is helping him. Where are you? Maya asked instantly. Home, a dinner from hell. I'm on my way, she said, her voice firm. Meet me at the old coffee shop in 20 minutes. Don't be late. I hung up and looked in the mirror. I wiped a single tear from my cheek and reapplied my lipstick. The mask was back in place. Game on, I whispered. Maya. I slammed into her the moment I walked into the coffee shop, wrapping my arms around her so tight she wheezed. Whoa, air. She patted my back awkwardly, then pulled away to grip my shoulders. Her dark eyes searched mine with intense scrutiny. You haven't hugged me like that in years. You haven't even called me. What happened? I had a nightmare, I whispered, my voice trembling. I sat down, gripping her hands across the sticky table. A horrible, vivid nightmare. Adrian, he took everything. The money, the company, the house. And Lila was helping him. Maya's expression hardened instantly. She didn't laugh. She didn't tell me I was crazy. She slammed her coffee cup down. I knew it, she hissed. I knew that guy was snake oil. And your sister is a little viper. I need to know for sure, Maya. I can't trust anyone else. Will you help me? Is the sky blue? She smirked, a dangerous glint in her eyes. I'm in. Let's bury them. The next morning, the fluorescent lights of the Vance Corp boardroom hummed overhead. Elena, what is this? Adrian asked, his smile tight. He gestured to the severe-looking man standing next to me in a gray suit. This is Mr. Sterling, I beamed, clapping my hands together. He's the best forensic auditor in the city. Daddy said I could hire him. Adrian's left eye twitched. We have an accounting department, sweetie. You don't need to waste money on external contractors. Oh, it's not a waste. I interrupted, walking over to fix his tie, smoothing it against his chest. I want to learn how you run the business, Adrian. Daddy says a good wife supports her husband's work. Mr. Sterling is going to teach me everything so I can be just like you. I want to understand where every single penny goes. Adrian stiffened. The color drained slightly from his face. He couldn't refuse without looking like he was hiding something from his adoring fiancée. He forced a laugh that sounded like dry leaves crunching. That's very sweet, babe. Just don't get in the way, okay? I won't make a sound, I promised. 2 hours later, inside a private glass office, Mr. Sterling slid a tablet across the desk. Mrs. Vance, he said, his voice dry and devoid of emotion. Look at these recurring transfers. Small amounts. Under 10,000 each, so they don't trigger the automatic flags. But they add up. I looked at the screen. Consulting fees, Pegasus Holdings. It's over $200,000 in 6 months, Sterling noted. Shall I flag this to the board immediately? No, I said quietly, staring at the numbers. It was the start. He was testing the waters. If I stopped him now, he'd just claim it was an administrative error and find a better, harder way to steal. Let it go, Mr. Sterling, I said, looking up with cold eyes. Record it, track it. But do not stop it. You want him to steal more? He asked, raising a gray eyebrow. I want him to feel safe, I whispered, closing the tablet. I want him to hang himself. Sterling adjusted his glasses. Understood. Elena, darling. When is the big day? We're all dying to know. Mrs. Gable's massive diamond ring flashed in my face as she grabbed my arm. Soon, I promise. You'll be the first to get an invite, I smiled, sliding past her. The ballroom was suffocating, filled with the smell of expensive perfume, champagne, and desperation. In my past life, I would have been clinging to Adrian's arm, soaking up the attention, blind to the sharks swimming around us. Tonight, I was hunting. I scanned the periphery of the gilded room. There he was. Julian stood in the darkest corner near the balcony doors, sipping amber liquid from a crystal glass. He watched the room like a silent panther. He was the CEO of a rival tech firm, a man Adrian always dismissed as second-rate. I knew better now. He was the only person outside my family who had come to my funeral. I took a deep breath and walked straight toward him. He strained as I approached, his guarded expression flickering with surprise. Mr. Blackwood, I said, extending my hand. Enjoying the party? He hesitated a fraction of a second before taking my hand. His grip was firm and cool. Miss Vance, I didn't think you knew I existed outside of Adrian's complaints about my market share. I've been blind to a lot of important things, I said, holding his intense gaze. I'm changing that habit. He raised a dark eyebrow. Is that so? Adrian is announcing an exclusive partnership with Cyberdane Systems tomorrow morning, I murmured, leaning in closer so only he could hear. The scent of sandalwood and scotch surrounded him. He won the bid by undercutting you using stolen projections from your own analyst. If you move tonight, you can block him. Julian stared at me for a long beat. The indifference vanished from his eyes, replaced by sharp, calculating curiosity. Why tell me this? He asked quietly. He's your fiancé. You're supposed to be his loyal shadow. Let's just say I prefer a fair fight now, I whispered, backing away slowly. Watch your back, Julian. Things are changing. I turned to leave, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw a flash of red. Lila was rushing toward me, holding a towering glass of red wine, feigning a stumble. Oh no, Elena, look go! She shrieked. It was pathetic. I knew her moves before she made them. At the very last second, I smoothly sidestepped to the left. Splash. The entire glass drenched the front of Layla's shimmering white gown. She gasped, frozen in horror as the crimson stain spread like fresh blood over her stomach. Lila, I cried out, loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. I rushed over, grabbing a linen napkin and dabbing uselessly at her dress, making sure to smear the stain wider. Oh my God, are you okay? You're so clumsy tonight. Did you have too much to drink? You moved, she sputtered, her face turning beet red as cameras flashed around us. It's okay, don't make a scene, I cooed, embracing her stiff body and looking pityingly at the crowd. We'll get you cleaned up. Poor thing, over her trembling shoulder I caught Julian's eye across the room. He raised his glass in a subtle, almost invisible salute. We can't keep waiting on your father, Elena, Adrian snapped, pacing the Persian rug. The market is moving too fast. He's stalling on the funding check. He's just being careful, I said softly, adjusting the hem of my skirt. You know how he is with contracts. I say we skip it, Adrian said, stopping abruptly in front of me. He grabbed my hands, his grip tight and sweaty. Let's elope, next week. Just you and me. No press, no delays, no complicated legal paperwork. No prenup, I corrected in my head. That's what you actually mean. You want legal access to my trust fund before I wake up. Oh, Adrian, I breathed, widening my eyes. That sounds incredibly romantic. A secret wedding? Exactly, he grinned, thinking he had finally cornered me. We get married, merge our assets immediately, and show the world we don't need anyone else. I'll do it, I said, pausing for effect. But I have one condition. We need a home first, a real asset. I can't start our marriage in a rental, and I want it to be our investment. Not Daddy's. We can buy a mansion after we get access to your trust fund. he dismissed, checking his watch. No, I said firmly. I want us to be independent. Have you heard of the Emerald Heights project? My friend at the country club said it's a guaranteed triple return, but the buy-in window closes tonight. Adrian hesitated, frowning. I've heard rumors. But it requires a massive cash injection up front. Liquid capital. It's risky, I admitted, looking down and playing with my ring. Maybe we shouldn't. It's probably too big for us. Lila walked into the room, scrolling on her phone. She couldn't resist the bait. Too big, please, she scoffed, walking over to sit on the armrest of Adrian's chair. I read the prospectus, Adrian. Emerald Heights is solid. If you pass on this, you're leaving free money on the table. Are you a CEO or a coward? I suppressed a smile. Layla's arrogance was my best weapon. She had no idea the developer was currently being investigated by the FBI and would vanish with the money next month. It's my entire personal savings, Lila, Adrian muttered, wiping his forehead. Everything I've squirreled away in the offshore accounts. Think of the power, I whispered, leaning in to touch his cheek. We triple your money and you never have to beg my father for anything again. You'll be the king. That did it. The thought of not needing my father broke him. Fine, he growled. He opened his laptop and logged into the secret account he thought I didn't know existed. Transferring funds to Emerald Heights Development, he said, his finger hovering over the key. $550,000. Do it? Lila urged, her eyes greedy. Click. Transfer successful. The computer screen flashed green. We're going to be so rich, Adrian exhaled, slumping back. Yes, I said, taking a calm sip of my tea to hide the triumph on my lips. You certainly made a life-changing decision. They had just poured their entire safety net into a black hole. Lila, this is the single most important file in the building, I said, pressing the thick red folder into her hands. The Alpha Project blueprints. Dad needs them delivered to the secure archives downtown, personally. Lila looked at the folder, then at me, her eyes narrowing. Why aren't you doing it? You're the perfect daughter lately. I have a dress fitting for the wedding. I lied smoothly, checking my watch. I thought you wanted more responsibility? Dad said if you handle this well, he might finally promote you. Her greed flared instantly in her eyes, overpowering her suspicion. Fine, I'll do it. Don't open it, I warned, knowing she would do the exact opposite. And go straight there. It's confidential. I know how to do a job, Elena, she scoffed, grabbing her purse and storming out of my office. I waited exactly 10 seconds. Then I opened my laptop. The GPS tracker I had slipped inside the folder lining blinked on the map. She wasn't heading downtown. She was heading to the Grind, a quiet cafe 3 blocks away. I stood up and walked into my father's office. Daddy? I poked my head in. You look exhausted. He rubbed his temples, staring at a stack of paperwork. Just a headache, sweetheart. Let's get some fresh air, I insisted, walking over and pulling him up by the arm. I'm buying you a coffee. No arguments. You need a break. 10 minutes later, we walked into the cafe. The smell of roasted beans filled the air. It's crowded, Dad grumbled, looking around. Let's go back. Wait, I said, pausing and pointing to a secluded booth in the back corner. Isn't that Lila? Dad squinted. Who is she with? I gasped theatrically, my hand flying to my mouth. That's Chloe, the head acquirer for Omnicorp, our biggest competitor. Why would Lila be meeting with her? We walked closer, our footsteps silent on the carpet. The red folder was open on the table. Lila was sliding a small silver flash drive across the wood toward Chloe. So this drive has the full specs? Chloe asked, her voice clear. Everything, Lila replied, her voice low. But I want the cash transfer confirmed right now. Layla, my father roared. Lila jumped so hard she knocked her latte over. Chloe, a professional to the end, snatched her bag and bolted for the back exit before anyone could process what was happening, leaving Lila alone with the open folder. Daddy. Lila stammered, her face draining of all color. It's not what it looks like. I heard you, he shouted, his voice shaking with betrayal. You're selling our secrets, your own family, for cash? No, I was pressured. Someone threatened me. She sobbed, tears streaming down her face as she grasped at straws. Stop lying, Dad said, his shoulders slumping as if carrying a heavy weight. You're suspended, Lila, effective immediately. Get out of my sight. Lila ran past us, weeping loudly. Dad sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. How could she? I sat next to him for a moment, patting his back, then stood up to follow Lila. She was hyperventilating by her car in the parking lot. I'm ruined, she wailed when she saw me approaching. He's going to disown me. I walked up and pulled her into a hug, resting my chin on her shoulder so she couldn't see my cold smile. I whispered, stroking her hair. Everyone makes mistakes, Lila. Maybe you just aren't cut out for business. Don't worry, I'll take care of everything. I felt her tense up, realizing she had lost her place in the company, but she had no one else left to hold on to. The seeds of destruction were finally blooming. Miss Elena? I froze, my hand hovering over the back door handle. The house was silent, wrapped in the heavy darkness of midnight. I turned slowly. Sarah stood in the hallway shadows, her old gray cardigan pulled tight around her thin frame. She'd been our housekeeper since I was a child. In my last life, I never paid her much attention. Sarah, I whispered, my heart thumping against my ribs. I just needed some fresh air. She looked down at my heavy trench coat and combat boots. Then she looked at the clock on the wall. She knew I was lying. It's cold tonight, miss, she said softly, her eyes sad but knowing. She walked over, took a thick scarf from the coat rack and wrapped it around my neck. Mr. Adrian is asleep. He won't hear you leave. I stared at her, stunned. You won't tell him? Mr. Adrian smiles too much with his mouth and not enough with his eyes, Sarah muttered, patting my shoulder. Be careful. Thank you, Sarah, I choked out. I slipped into the night. The park was submerged in fog. A black sedan idled silently near the old stone fountain. As I approached, the rear door opened and Julian stepped out. He wore a dark wool coat, his breath visible in the chilly air. You came, he said, his voice deep and rough. You sent a car, I replied, stepping into the dim light of a street lamp. I assumed it was important. The tip you gave me at the gala, Julian said, stepping closer. It was accurate. Adrian lost the Cyberdang contract today. His stock dipped 4%. I know, I said. I saw him throwing a vase in the library. Why? Julian asked, his gaze intense, pinning me in place. Why are you destroying your own fiancé's reputation? You're supposed to marry him in 2 months. Adrian isn't who you think he is, I said, my voice hardening. He's a parasite. And I'm done feeding him. Julian studied my face for a long moment, searching for deceit. I've been investigating him for a year. I knew about the shell companies, but I couldn't figure out where he moved his liquid assets. Emerald Heights, I answered. Julian's eyes widened slightly. The development project? That's a Ponzi scheme. Everyone in the inner circle knows the feds are closing in. He doesn't, I smirked. He put everything he had into it. It crashes in 3 weeks. Julian let out a low, impressed whistle. You let him walk into a buzzsaw. I turned it on for him, I corrected. When it crashes, he will hold worthless land deeds. He'll be desperate for cash. I want you to buy the deeds from him. Why would I want worthless land? Because the land is valuable, I explained, stepping closer until I could smell the faint scent of rain and cedar on him. The developer is the fraud, not the location. If you buy the rights from Adrian for pennies on the dollar when he's panicked, you get the land legal and clear. You win, he loses. Julian stared at me, the air between us shifted. It wasn't just business anymore. You're terrifying, Elena, he murmured. Is that a compliment? The highest one I can give. He extended his hand. Partners? I reached out and took his hand. His grip was warm, solid. A jolt of electricity shot up my arm, a spark I had never felt in 10 years with Adrian. It wasn't fear. It was potential. Partners, I agreed. One question, he said, not letting go. What do you want out of this? Really? I looked up at him, feeling the cold wind on my face but warmth in my chest. My life back, I whispered. He squeezed my hand. Then let's take it. I walked away, my heart beating a new rhythm. For the first time since I woke up, I wasn't just running from a nightmare. I was running towards something real. Miss Elena? I froze, my hand hovering over the back door handle. The house was silent, wrapped in the heavy darkness of midnight. I turned slowly. Sarah stood in the hallway shadows, her old gray cardigan pulled tight around her thin frame. She'd been our housekeeper since I was a child. In my last life, I never paid her much attention. Sarah, I whispered, my heart thumping against my ribs. I just needed some fresh air. She looked down at my heavy trench coat and combat boots. Then she looked at the clock on the wall. She knew I was lying. "It's cold tonight, miss," she said softly, her eyes sad but knowing. She walked over, took a thick scarf from the coat rack and wrapped it around my neck. "Mr. Adrian is asleep. He won't hear you leave." I stared at her, stunned. "You won't tell him?" "Mr. Adrian smiles too much with his mouth and not enough with his eyes," Sarah muttered, patting my shoulder. "Be careful." "Thank you, Sarah," I choked out. I slipped into the night. The park was submerged in fog. A black sedan idled silently near the old stone fountain. As I approached, the rear door opened and Julian stepped out. He wore a dark wool coat, his breath visible in the chilly air. "You came," he said, his voice deep and rough. "You sent a car," I replied, stepping into the dim light of a street lamp. "I assumed it was important." "The tip you gave me at the gala," Julian said, stepping closer. It was accurate. Adrian lost the Cyberdyne contract today. His stock dipped 4%. "I know," I said. "I saw him throwing a vase in the library." "Why?" Julian asked, his gaze intense, pinning me in place. "Why are you destroying your own fiancé's reputation? You're supposed to marry him in 2 months. Adrian isn't who you think he is," I said, my voice hardening. "He's a parasite, and I'm done feeding him." Julian studied my face for a long moment, searching for deceit. "I've been investigating him for a year. I knew about the shell companies, but I couldn't figure out where he moved his liquid assets." "Emerald Heights," I answered. Julian's eyes widened slightly. "The development project? That's a Ponzi scheme. Everyone in the inner circle knows the feds are closing in." "He doesn't," I smirked. "He put everything he had into it. It crashes in 3 weeks." Julian let out a low, impressed whistle. "You let him walk into a buzzsaw." "I turned it on for him," I corrected. "When it crashes, he will hold worthless land deeds. He'll be desperate for cash." "I want you to buy the deeds from him." "Why would I want worthless land?" "Because the land is valuable," I explained, stepping closer until I could smell the faint scent of rain and cedar on him. "The developer is the fraud, not the location. If you buy the rights from Adrian for pennies on the dollar when he's panicked, you get the land legal and clear. You win, he loses." Julian stared at me. The air between us shifted. "It wasn't just business anymore. You're terrifying, Elena," he murmured. "Is that a compliment?" "The highest one I can give." He extended his hand. "Partners?" I reached out and took his hand. His grip was warm, solid. A jolt of electricity shot at my arm, a spark I had never felt in 10 years with Adrian. It wasn't fear. It was potential. "Partners," I agreed. "One question," he said, not letting go. "What do you want out of this, really?" I looked up at him, feeling the cold wind on my face but warmth in my chest. "My life back," I whispered. He squeezed my hand. "Then let's take it." I walked away, my heart beating a new rhythm. For the first time since I woke up, I wasn't just running from a nightmare. I was running towards something real. "Just right here, babe," Adrian said, tapping the bottom of a document with his manicured fingernail. "And here." And initials on the last page. The pen felt heavy in my hand. We were sitting in my father's study, the heavy oak door closed against the hallway noise. My father sat behind his massive desk, sipping his coffee, looking over the guest list for the 3rd time. "It's a lot of paperwork just for a marriage license," I said, looking up at Adrian. His smile was strained, the skin around his eyes tight. He smelled of nervous sweat and too much cologne. "It's just standard stuff," he insisted, pushing the paper closer to my hand. "Tax forms, joint asset declarations. It helps us save money on the back end. You know, I'm just trying to look out for our finances." "Of course," I said softly. I lowered the pen to the paper. "In my past life, I signed this without reading a single word. That signature was the nail in my coffin. It gave him everything." The tip of the pen touched the paper. Adrian let out a small, greedy breath. "Stop." The door swung open. Mr. Sterling marched in, holding a duplicate copy of the papers Adrian had just handed me. "Mr. Sterling?" Adrian snapped, standing up. "We are having a private family moment." "Get out." I asked Mr. Sterling to double-check the tax codes. I said innocently, looking up at Adrian. "I didn't want us to get audited, honey." "Mr. Vance," Sterling said, ignoring Adrian and walking straight to my father. "You need to hear this." Clause 4, subsection B. My father looked up, confused. What is it? Sterling cleared his throat and read aloud, his voice cutting through the room like a knife. In the event of the undersigned's mental or physical incapacity, full power of attorney over all assets, including the Vance Corporation voting shares and the primary estate, shall immediately transfer to the spouse. The room went dead silent. The clock on the wall ticked loudly. That's standard, Adrian stammered, his face turning pale. It's just in case something happens to Elena. No, Sterling corrected sharply. This document doesn't define incapacity. It leaves the definition up to the spouse. Meaning, Mr. Sterling could declare your daughter stress-induced and seize control of her inheritance and, by extension, your company the day after the wedding. My father slowly stood up. His face turned a shade of red I'd never seen before. You, my father whispered, his voice shaking with rage. You tried to trick my daughter into signing over my company? No, sir. Adrian backed away, hands raised. It's a typo. My lawyer, he must have used an old template. I didn't read it. You didn't read the document you just forced my daughter to sign? My father roared, slamming his fist on the desk. Do you take me for a fool, boy? Adrian looked at me, desperation in his eyes. Elena, tell him I love you. I wouldn't do that. It was time for my performance. I let the pen drop from my hand. It clattered loudly on the wooden floor. I covered my mouth, forcing tears to well up in my eyes. You wanted to control Daddy? I sobbed, my voice breaking. You wanted to take the company? I thought you loved me for me. I do. Adrian reached for me. Don't touch her. My father shouted, coming around the desk. You lied to me, I cried, stepping back. Everything was a lie. The business deals, the tax forms. You're just a thief. I looked down at the diamond ring on my finger. The symbol of my slavery in the last life. I yanked it off. It scraped my skin, but I didn't care. Take it, I screamed, throwing the ring at his chest. It bounced off his tie and rolled under the sofa. Get out! I never want to see you again. Elena, please, think about the wedding. The guests, Adrian begged, sweating profusely now. The wedding is off, I said, my voice turning icy cold. Get out of my house before I call security. My father pointed to the door, his eyes murderous. You heard her. Get out. Adrian looked between us, realizing the game was over. He sneered, his handsome mask finally falling off to reveal the rat beneath. He turned and stormed out, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. I buried my face in my hands, pretending to weep. My father rushed to hold me. I'm so sorry, Daddy, I sobbed into his shirt. I almost lost everything. It's okay, he soothed, stroking my hair. We caught him. It's over. I closed my eyes and smiled against his chest. Oh no, Adrian. It's not over. It's just beginning. Get your hands off me. Do you know who I am? Adrian's voice cracked as the security guards dragged him through the glass doors of the Vance Corporation lobby. You are a trespasser, my father said, standing on the steps, his arms crossed. And you are fired. If you ever step foot on my property again, I will have you arrested. You can't do this. Adrian screamed, his expensive suit rumpled, his hair a mess. I built this company's portfolio. You need me. We checked the portfolio, I said, stepping out from behind my father. It's mostly just transfers to your personal accounts. We don't need a thief, Adrian. He glared at me, his eyes filled with pure hatred. You planned this. Goodbye, Adrian, I said simply. The guards tossed him onto the sidewalk. He scrambled up, dusting off his pants, looking frantically at his phone. I knew who was calling, the loan sharks for the Emerald Heights project. The deadline was today. He was broke, exposed, and desperate. I watched him run toward the employee parking lot. I turned to my father. I need to make sure he leaves, I said. Be careful, Dad warned. I slipped out the side exit, keeping to the shadows. I found Adrian near his car. He wasn't leaving. He was pacing, screaming into his phone. I don't have it right now. I need 24 hours. No, don't come to my house. He slammed the phone down just as a silver sedan screeched to a halt next to him. Lila jumped out. She looked frantic. Adrian. She cried, rushing to him. My keycard isn't working. They locked me out of the building. Dad won't answer my calls. Shut up. Adrian snapped, grabbing her shoulders and shaking her. I don't care about your job. I need money. How much do you have in your personal account? Lila blinked, confused. What? Why? The Emerald Heights deal collapsed, Adrian hissed, his face inches from hers. It was a scam. The money is gone. I owe dangerous people a lot of cash, Lila. Give me your savings. I can't, Lila stammered, pulling away. What do you mean you can't? I spent it, she shrieked. I bought the new convertible. I bought the designer bags for the wedding. I thought we were going to be rich today. Adrian let out a primal roar of frustration. He kicked the side of his own car, leaving a massive dent. You useless greedy leech. You told me that deal was solid. I thought it was, she cried. Don't yell at me. You ruined me. Adrian lunged at her, grabbing her arm. You and your jealousy, you pushed me to invest. You wanted to be Elena so bad you blinded us both. Stop it, you're hurting me. Lila sobbed, trying to pry his fingers off. Adrian, stop. Please, I have news, good news. He froze, breathing heavily. What? I'm pregnant, she blurted out, tears streaming down her face. I took a test this morning. We're going to be a family. We can start over. It was a lie. I knew it was a lie. In my past life, she used this exact line to trap a wealthy doctor when Adrian got bored of her. Adrian stared at her stomach. Then he looked at her face. There was no love in his eyes, only disgust. He shoved her, hard. Lila stumbled back, hitting the pavement with a cry. I don't care, Adrian spat, wiping his hands on his pants as if she were dirt. I don't want a family with a loser. I want money. If you don't have it, you're dead weight. Adrian? She whispered, shocked. Don't follow me, he growled, getting into his car. I stood behind a concrete pillar, my phone held steady. The red recording dot pulsed on the screen. I had everything. The admission of the scam, the assault, the confession of motive. I hit stop. Send, I whispered. The video file uploaded to a group chat titled Evidence, which included my father, the head of security, and the local police captain. Then I opened a second email draft. It contained Mr. Sterling's forensic audit attached as a PDF. Subject: Embezzlement and Fraud, Adrian Sterling. I pressed send. I walked out from behind the pillar. Lila was still sitting on the ground, weeping into her hands. Adrian's taillights were fading in the distance. He's not coming back, Lila, I said, my voice echoing in the empty lot. She looked up, her mascara running down her cheeks. Elena, he pushed me. I know, I said, looking down at her without an ounce of pity. I saw. Sirens began to wail in the distance, getting louder with every second. Do you hear that? I asked. What is it? She sniffled. That, I smiled, is the sound of consequences. He's coming, Julian said, checking the security feed on his tablet. He just topped the back gate. I sat perfectly still on the velvet sofa in the center of the living room. 2 large security guards stood in the shadows of the hallway, invisible to anyone entering from the garden terrace. Are you scared? Julian asked, placing a hand on my shoulder. No, I replied, smoothing my skirt. I've already died once, Julian. A desperate man with no money doesn't scare me. Crash. The French doors shattered inward. Glass sprayed across the hardwood floor. Adrian stumbled into the room. He looked like a wild animal. His shirt was torn, his eyes were bloodshot, and he was soaking wet from the rain. He held a heavy tire iron in his hand. Elena, he screamed, his voice cracking. I know you're in here. I'm right here, Adrian, I said calmly, not moving a muscle. He froze, seeing me sitting there so composed. He swung the tire iron wildly. You did this. You poisoned your father against me. You planted that fake audit. The audit wasn't fake, I said, my voice steady. The money is gone. You spent it. Because you tricked me. He roared, taking a step closer. You told me to buy Emerald Heights. You told me to trust Marcus. You planned every single second of this. Julian stepped in front of me, his posture dangerous. That's close enough, Sterling. Get out of my way. Adrian yelled, spitting as he spoke. She's a witch. She's not human. No one changes like that overnight. She's the devil. I stood up. I placed a hand on Julian's arm and gently pushed him aside. Elena, don't. Julian warned low in his throat. It's okay, I whispered. I walked toward Adrian. He looked at me, trembling with rage and fear. I stopped just out of reach of his weapon. I didn't plan your greed, Adrian. I said softly, looking deep into his panicked eyes. I didn't plan your arrogance. I didn't make you steal from my father or cheat with my sister. You set me up, he sobbed. I didn't set you up, I whispered, leaning in. I just let you be yourself. And you destroyed yourself perfectly. I'll kill you. He raised the iron. Police, drop the weapon. The front doors burst open. 6 officers swarmed the room, guns drawn. The 2 security guards in the hallway stepped out, blocking Adrian's exit. Adrian looked around, realized he was trapped, and dropped the iron with a clang. Get on the ground now. They tackled him. As they cuffed his hands behind his back, he lifted his head, screaming my name. Elena, tell them. Tell them it was a mistake. Take him away, I said to the sergeant. We followed them out to the driveway. Blue and red lights flashed against the rain, but the drama wasn't over. Near the gate, a smaller police car had blocked a taxi. Lila was being pulled out of the back seat, kicking and screaming. Let me go. I didn't do anything, she shrieked. Elena Vance, an officer said. You are being detained for corporate espionage. I didn't steal anything. She wailed. It was a setup. A sleek black car pulled up. The window rolled down. Chloe, the rival agent, looked out with a bored expression. She held up a plastic bag containing the flash drive. She sold me the data for 50 grand. Chloe told the officer loudly. Here are the texts proving she initiated the sale. I'm turning state's witness. I'm not going down for her stupidity. You traitor. Lila screamed at Chloe. You said we were partners. Business is business, honey, Chloe smirked, rolling up her window. I stood on the porch, Julian by my side. I watched as they shoved Adrian into one car and Lila into another. They were finally gone. Is it over? Julian asked quietly. I took a deep breath of the cold, rainy air. It felt cleaner than it had in years, yes, I said. It's finally over. Visitors, sit down. No touching the glass. The guard's voice was monotone, bored. I sat on the cold metal stool, placing my hands on the ledge. The room smelled of bleach and despair. On the other side of the thick plexiglass, the door buzzed open. Adrian walked in. He looked small. The arrogance that used to radiate from him like heat was gone. His head was shaved, revealing the pale skin beneath. His orange jumpsuit hung loosely on his frame. He sat down slowly, picking up the receiver. I picked up mine. You came, he rasped. His voice was hoarse, as if he hadn't used it in days. I had to see it, I said, my voice calm. I had to be sure. Sure of what? He scoffed, a flicker of his old sneer appearing before vanishing. That I'm ruined? That I'm rotting in here? That you can't hurt me anymore, I corrected. He leaned forward, his forehead resting against the glass. His eyes searched mine, desperate and confused. Get me out of here, Elena, please. I know you're angry. I know I messed up, but 10 years? I'll die in here. You committed fraud, Adrian. You embezzled millions. You destroyed people's lives. The judge was lenient. I did it for us. He shouted, his voice cracking through the receiver. I wanted to give you the world. I wanted to be worthy of you. Stop lying, I cut him off sharply. You did it because you're greedy. You did it because you thought I was stupid. He fell silent. He stared at me for a long time, the silence stretching between us like a taut wire. Then his expression shifted. The desperation faded, replaced by a deep, gnawing confusion. That's just it, he whispered. You were stupid. I raised an eyebrow. Excuse me? No, listen to me, he said, his eyes narrowing. I knew you. I knew every inch of your mind. You were soft. You were naive. You believed everything I said. I had you wrapped around my finger for 3 years. People change, Adrian. Not like that. He shook his head violently. Not overnight. I've been thinking about it every night in the cell. That morning. The day of our 3-month anniversary. You woke up and you were different. My heart skipped a beat. He had noticed. Even through his narcissism, he had felt the shift. You looked at me differently, he continued, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. You smiled, but your eyes were dead. You knew things you shouldn't have known. You predicted the market. You trapped Lila. You set up Marcus. He slammed his hand against the glass. What happened? He demanded. Did you hire a detective? Did someone tip you off? How did you turn into this? I looked at him. Really looked at him. In my mind, the prison walls dissolved. I was back in that hospital bed. The heart monitor was beeping a slow, dying rhythm. I could feel the cold seizing my limbs. I could see the news report of him and Lila laughing on my grave. I could feel the crushing weight of betrayal that had killed me. I wanted to scream it at him. I died. You killed me. I came back from the dead just to drag you down to hell. The words were right there, burning on the tip of my tongue. It would be the ultimate victory to let him know he was beaten by a ghost. But then I saw the madness in his eyes. He wanted a reason. He wanted a grand explanation to make himself feel important, to make his downfall feel like a tragedy of fate rather than the result of his own failures. He didn't deserve my truth. He didn't deserve to know the miracle of my second chance. I took a deep breath and let the anger go. I didn't hire a detective, Adrian, I said softly. Then what? He begged, tears pooling in his eyes. Tell me, how did you know? I stood up, placing the receiver back on the hook. I looked him dead in the eye through the glass. I woke up, I said simply. What? What does that mean? He screamed, slamming his fists against the partition. Elena! Come back. That's not an answer. I turned my back on him. Elena! His screams were muffled by the heavy steel door as it closed behind me. I walked down the long gray corridor. With every step, I felt lighter. The heavy coat of bitterness I had worn since my rebirth slipped off my shoulders. I pushed open the heavy exit doors and stepped out into the sunlight. The air was crisp and sweet. The girl who died in that hospital bed was finally gone. She could rest now. I wasn't a victim. I wasn't a ghost. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the fresh air of a future that was finally truly mine. It's done, I whispered to the wind. Quarterly figures are in, Maya announced, dropping a thick binder onto the wrought iron garden table. We're up 40% since you took over the CEO chair. I inhaled the scent of blooming jasmine. It was spring, finally. The air didn't smell like rain in hospitals anymore. It smelled like life. And the staff turnover? I asked, tracing the rim of my teacup. Non-existent, Maya grinned, sitting opposite me. People actually like coming to work when the boss isn't embezzling their pension funds. You did it, Elle. You cleaned the rot out. We cleaned it out, I corrected, smiling at her. I couldn't run this place without my coup. Maya checked her watch and stood up. I'll take the compliment. But I have a meeting with the new investors, and you... Well, you have a visitor, she winked, pointing toward the rose garden path. Don't keep him waiting. I heard the crunch of gravel before I saw him. Julian walked slowly, his hands in his pockets, looking less like a corporate shark and more like a man at peace. He stopped a few feet away, respecting my space. Hiding? He asked, his voice low and steady. Reflecting, I replied, turning to face him. He stepped up next to me, looking out over the manicured lawn where my father was playing fetch with his new retriever. The board is terrified of you, you know? Julian noted with a dry chuckle. They say you have a sixth sense for lies. They call you the Iron Heiress. I just know what a liar looks like now, I said softly. I had a very good teacher. Julian studied my face, the wind catching his dark hair. He didn't ask about Adrian. He never did. He understood that some names didn't need to be spoken anymore. You look different today, he said. Different how? Lighter, he murmured. Like you're not waiting for the other shoe to drop. I felt the corners of my mouth lift. It wasn't the practiced, sharp smile I had used to slice Adrian open. It wasn't the mask of the naive girl I used to be. It was genuine. It was mine. I started, looking up at the endless clear blue sky. I think I'm finally done looking back. The debt is paid. Julian extended his hand. Then look forward. I looked at his open palm. No contracts, no schemes, no hidden agendas. Just him. I slid my hand into his. His fingers interlaced with mine, warm and grounding. A rush of warmth traveled up my arm, settling in my chest. I had lost the man I thought I loved, but in the fire of that betrayal, I had forged something unbreakable. Ready? He asked. I squeezed his hand. Ready? I whispered. The nightmare was over. My second life had truly begun.